Many early career scientists will likely be watching our Alliance member discussions. Knowing that you have them as an audience, what advice or guidance do you have for early career scientists who are interested in both science policy and advocacy?
Well, I think it's important to be a credible advocate. I think it's important to have the base in actually doing the science. I think it oftentimes makes you more credible when you've actually done the science yourself. You're often in a better position to be able to explain why a particular policy is important. So I wouldn't play short shrift to your scientific career, even if you know that ultimately you're more interested in the policy. You can do your science and research while you're also doing work in advocacy and policy. So I just think it is important to get a strong base in doing the science while or first before you get headlong into a science policy role and an advocacy role. Again, I think they're very much part of a continuum from doing the research to developing the policy and then being an advocate. And I think to the extent that you have an opportunity to gain expertise in each, you will be more effective as a policymaker. If you've been the scientist, you'll be more um, credible as a advocate if you've worked in policy and also had the science and research opportunity.
But I want to get back, finally, we're running out of time, to some things that you've mentioned that I think would apply very nicely to the question about what advice you might give to an early career scientist right now, regardless of what field they're in. And I think about what you said right when we started about not being afraid to fail. And that's certainly been characteristic of the response to COVID and to your leadership, I would say, broadly stated. So can you tell us about how do you develop that? And what else might you say to an early career researcher?
Many young people who decide to go into science, are high achievers, and they're used to being, the smartest person in the room. And what I tell young people is actually, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room to succeed. You just always have to be in a room with smart people. And that really underscores my entire career. I've had the luxury of learning from giants. I've always been able to be in a room with really, really smart people. And what I've learned from observing them and listening to them and working with them is that sometimes hard work and persistence wins out over brilliance, because biology, nature is the smartest of everybody in the room, and without that willingness to take risks and fail, without that willingness to keep at it, you're never going to overcome the remarkable challenges that nature throws at us. So those would be the elements that I would advise young people.
So I think you need to get involved. And I think you need to get involved with organizations. As I said, I first got involved with the American Federation for Clinical Research, and I rose to be the president. And we did a great deal of advocacy. And we were one of the organizations that helped put together Research America, because we felt the coalitions were so good. I would pay attention to taking up the opportunities to speak in public fora about the research and about the importance of research in general. I also learned then that it was important to understand more research than just my own, and to also be able to discuss the goods and the challenges of research and the timeline that it takes, that it isn't instantaneous, and the need to be accurate and the need for having the self-correcting process. I also think you need to engage with your patients. People remember what they see and touch themselves. And even when you're doing a good job taking care of a patient, talking about, I'm hoping to make you better because of what I'm doing in the lab, resonates with those patients, and they take that out and multiply your efforts.
Many early career scientists will likely be watching our Alliance member discussions and recordings such as this. What advice or guidance would you have for early career scientists who are interested in both science policy as well as advocacy?
You know, a lot of us in science and in engineering are trained to prefer the technical aspects of what we do as opposed to the human sociological aspects of what we do. And yet we are all thrilled when what we do impacts humans and society in general. But we often lack the language, lack the understanding of the interconnections that govern how people perceive what we do, accept what we do, regulate what we do, fund what we do. And so as an early career scientist, actually getting experience, thinking about the overall context within which we're doing our bit and being able to engage in discussing it, in initially bringing certain amount of expertise to bear on the discussion, because facts matter. And sometimes in these discussions, absent a scientific voice, these facts can end up getting confused. So I think initially in the role of an expert at the science, but then quickly expanding to being able to start thinking about what are the judgments other people need to make, how would you make them, and then how can you help other people incorporate your thinking into the way they're processing this. I think these are things that can seem intimidating or outside the reach of science, but I think that view minimizes the impact of science. And in fact, it would be much better if scientists engaged in this type of activity of engaging in policy discussions, engaging in advocacy. And it's just a question of practice. In my case, I had the same aversion to it for a very long time. But once I started being able to talk about these things, I realized that a few iterations of why are people saying this, why are people saying that, trying to understand it, it allows you to participate, and that participation is welcome.